Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamana Tiravana Chari. Tiravana Chari. Yamuna Tiravana Chari. Tiravana Chari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtotavitra Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtotavitra Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Let's see if the stand keep standing. Okay, we're on page 552. 21, right? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Okay. On this 26th day of November, 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 13 entitled Nature, the Enjoyer and Consciousness. Text 21 on page 552. Karya, Karana, Kartritve, Hetu Prakatir Uchyate Purusha Sukadukanam Bhoktritve Heturuchyate Kaya Karana Kartritve Hetu Prakatiruchyate Purusha Sukadukanam Bhoktritve Heturuchyate Kaya Karana Kartritve Hetu Prakatiruchyate Purushak Sukadukanam Bhoktritve Heturuchyate Kaya Karana Kartritve Hetu Prakatiruchyate Purushak Sukadukanam Bhoktritve Heturuchyate. Go ahead. Kaya Karana Kartritve Hetu Prakatiruchyate Purushak Sukadukanam Bhoktritve Heturuchyate. Go ahead. Kaya Karana Kartritve Hetu Prakatiruchyate Purushak Sukadukanam Bhoktritve Heturuchyate. Kaya Karana Kartritve Hetu Prakatiruchyate Purushak Sukadukanam Bhoktritve Heturuchyate. Kaya Karana Kartritve Hetu Prakatiruchyate Purushak Sukadukanam Bhoktritve Heturuchyate. Chad? Bhakta Chad.
Karya Karana Kartritve
Kaya Karana Kartritve
Hetu Prakatiruchyate
Hetu Prakatiruchyate
Purusha Sukadukanam
Purushak Sukadukanam
Bhoktritve Heturuchyate.
Bhoktritve Heturuchyate. Vanessa? No. Word by words. Karya of effect, Karana and cause, Kartritve in the matter of creation. Hetuhu the instrument, Prakritihi material nature, Uchyate is said to be. Purushaha the living entity, Sukha of happiness, Dukkhanam and distress, Bhoktritve in enjoyment, Hetuhu the instrument, Uchyate is said to be. Translation. Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. Purport. The different manifestations of body and senses among the living entities are due to material nature. There are 8,400,000 different species of life, and these varieties are creations of the material nature. They arise from different sensual pleasures of the living entity, who thus desires to live in this body or that. When he is put into different bodies, he enjoys different kinds of happiness and distress, or that's been changed. When he is put into different bodies, he experiences different kinds of happiness and distress. His material happiness and distress are due to his body, and not to himself as he is. In his original state, there is no doubt of enjoyment. Therefore, that is his real state. Because of the desire to lord it over material nature, he is in the material world. In the spiritual world, there is no such thing. The spiritual world is pure. But in the material world, everyone is struggling hard to acquire different kinds of pleasures for the body. it might be more clear to state that this body is the effect of the senses. The senses are instruments for gratifying desire. Now, the sum total, body and instrument senses, are offered by material nature. And as will be clear in the next verse, the living entity is blessed or damned with circumstances according to his past desire and activity. According to one's desires and activities, material nature places one in various residential quarters, in other words, bodies. Thus, the being himself is the cause of his attaining such residential quarters and his attendant enjoyment or suffering. Once placed in some particular kind of body, he comes under the control of nature, because the body, being matter, acts according to the laws of nature. At that time, the living entity has no power to change that law. Suppose an entity is put into the body of a dog. As soon as he is put into the body of a dog, he must act like a dog. He cannot act otherwise. And if the living entity is put into the body of a hog, then he is forced to eat stool and act like a hog. Similarly, if the living entity is put into the body of a demigod, he must act according to his body. This is the law of nature. But in all circumstances, the supersoul is with the individual soul. That is explained in the Vedas, Mundaka Upanishad 3.1.1, as follows: Dva Suparna Sayujas Sakaya. The Supreme Lord is so kind upon the living entity that he always accompanies the individual soul and in all circumstances is present as the supersoul or Paramatma. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So now we're going to read the next verse in a few minutes, which I think is a key verse in the whole chapter. And this verse that we just read, 21, is very illuminating, because it said that nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects. In other words, nature doesn't really have our best interest in mind. Nature is really an effect itself of Krishna's material energy acting under his will, as he says, Maya Jakshena Prakati Suyate Sacharacharam. This whole material body, energy, is moving according to my oversight. In other words, there's intelligence behind it. It's not moving just at random. So nature itself is not, punishing us because we did this or that. It simply punishes us because, or rewards us according to the rules laid down and the direction laid down by the Supersoul, who's in charge of the whole thing. But here, this Kaya Karana Kartvidve, so nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects. So this is what the scientists study. You can see so many things happening impersonally. You can say, well, why does the oceans, the water evaporate and then come over and produce rain, and they can say, well, because water evaporates at a certain temperature and the sun is shining and it comes over and then it condenses and it falls and so this is the material explanation of things as they are. But the whole thing is that they're missing is that behind all of this activity of nature is an intelligent being. And really, just a little contemplation of this nature will make it very clear that there's got to be intelligence behind it. I mean, you're walking on the sidewalk here, say on Grand Avenue, and you see, all right, there's grass over here, there's the big trees here, there's some buildings over here, and so forth. And then you see, whoa, someone dropped their phone. I can see it in the grass. So you may pick up the phone. You may leave it. You think, well, maybe the person has a device to find his phone. I should leave it. But say you pick it up. So what is that phone? That phone is a very complicated machine. It didn't exist a few years ago. All these cell phones, you had to find a phone booth. You remember the phone booths? No phone booths anymore. But the phone you're holding in your hand is a result of many brains, right? Thinking, not just one person. I mean, the concept is there, but then there's so much intelligence involved in creating that phone, the transistors and all the other things that go into make the phone. So why is it obvious that there's someone behind it? Because there is so much intelligence shown by the phone itself. The fact that it works as it does, the fact that it can do so many things, the fact that you can practically live through the phone and GPS, the whole thing. But it's all a result of various intelligent human beings adding their intelligence to it and building on it. Also that they'll be able to sell their phone and make money like that. So compared to the phone, which is a pretty complicated thing, and it's always getting more complicated, they're adding to it. And just think of the human body. I always say that the human body, if you think about it, is proof of the existence of God. We didn't create it. We don't figure out how to produce all these organs and make them work together, obviously, But who's so silly that they can't see it's an evidence of great intelligence? Who keeps the temperature? Decide 98.6. I was always taught when I was a kid, you take a temperature, and that's Fahrenheit. That's normal. Oh no, it's 101, Mom. Oh, you have a fever. I better keep you home from school, right? Well, she doesn't know what's going on because it's 101, but she knows that it's not normal. That better to keep. So the whole point is that everywhere you look, there's intelligent design. Intelligent design. I remember my old friend Sariputta. I worked with him for several years on the BI, and brilliant. Bhajan Raimaraj really loved to have him around. He lived here for several years and worked with Judah Karma on that book, the what is it? Archaeology, the forbidden archaeology. Anyway, so he one of the first things he wrote was a mathematical treatise that not many devotees could understand. If you ever, I once went, when I went to, was thinking which college I would apply to. I was a senior in high school, I think. And my parents sent me here and there. I don't know if I must have got to Chicago somehow, because I was in Chicago University, which is a very good university. And I attended a math class. And they had these special black, they weren't black, they're green, green boards that they could write on. And they could write on one and fill it up and then move it aside and write on the next one, They had, because the equations sometimes get so complicated that they can't stop writing, they have to keep writing, So he was in that league. He was very expert. And he wrote this treatise that was meant for devotees. It was written in a way that we could understand pretty much. Proof by information theory that life cannot arise from matter. Because this is one of Prabhupada's main themes, especially in 1977. He was very eager for the BI, the Bhaktivedanta Institute, to do its work. And they even had a program in Vrindavan when he was there. Bhakti Subdhamana came and they invited some scientists and like that. Sariputta was it. So this is a very, the concept is simple. It's more or less what is called in Western theology, the argument from design, which is probably used all the time. That's what I was just saying. That all of this incredible design, our own bodies, the way that everything is moving, so the sun is coming up at just this time. I have on my phone, it's in the GCal, the Gaudiya calendar app, where it's keeping track and telling me when and we have it for different parts of the world, when Akadashi is coming, and we knew it today, I think it was Odana Shasti, it was a certain holiday, like that. So, but there's also a list at the bottom there, exactly when the sun rises, and when the sun sets and everything like that. So I've been keeping track of that because, I take a walk every morning, So it's always better if the sun is up, or at least rising. So as you probably know, the days are still getting shorter, and they will until about December 20th, my birthday. I know that's always the shortest day of the year, And then the first day of winter, my winter solstice. So they're giving the exact time, according to the second, when the sun rises, and it's rising later and later, and it's setting earlier and earlier, so that the day will be the shortest day at that time. So the point is that this whole universe, what to speak of our bodies and the world itself, is evidence of a supreme intelligence that has invented it and is maintaining it and is keeping things going. And basically, human beings, we're very good at messing it up, And now, we poured so many greenhouse gases in for the last 50, 60 years that, the hurricanes hit Jamaica. It was like they called it Melissa, and I read one article about it. They should have called it Godzilla. It was just so destructive. It was horrible. So but what are we doing? We don't know what we're doing, but we're able to affect the thing. So the whole point is that in his treatise, his specialty in college, one of his specialties was information theory. How much does a certain, if you take a room or a beaker somewhere, what is the amount of information in there in terms of the different chemicals, relationships, everything? It's a whole lot. So he showed by a lot of equations and things that I couldn't understand that there's so much information in the amount of the universe that we can see, in our own bodies in this world, that there's no conceivable way that it could have just come about by chance. Now, if you recall, or we haven't read it yet, but if you recall reading the 16th chapter, this is one of the mark of the demons, is that they say there's no one in control. Asatyam apatistam te jagadahur anishwaram aparasparasambhutam kimanyat kama hoitakam. There's a difference between the agnostic and the atheist. Very important business. And the problem sometimes conflates them because a word for someone who's in knowledge is gnostic, and I think it comes from the word jnana, originally. So, but an agnostic is not someone who declares that there's no God in control. Agnostic means I don't know. I don't know, And really, Orthodox agnostic says, and no one can know, And in that way, they're, of course, out to lunch, But not to know if there's a God, that's not a bad position. I was an agnostic when I started reading Prabhupada's books, and the existence of God made perfect sense because Prabhupada used so much logic in the Bhagavad Gita. But all of this boils down to this verse 21, that the material energy seems to be working on its own. The sun is rising. You don't see anyone pulling it up, and everything. But there is intelligence behind it. Ultimately, there's a person behind everything. That's the main philosophy. Just the opposite to these demons. They don't. It's interesting because what is it? Gnostic. What is it? There's a word in Sanskrit that sounds like that. Yastu Naranayam Devam Brahma Ruddhari Davite Samatvena Viksheta Sapashandi. This is a different word. Pashandi Bhavedvam. But anyway, there's a seeming confusion between the word, Prabhupada used agnostic to mean atheism because there's a word in Sanskrit that sounds like agnostic, which means atheist. So anyway, the Krishna is constantly, refuting that atheistic idea that things arise by chance. And the verse we just read, that Prakriti, which he is controlling, he's behind Prakriti, is the cause of the cause and effect phenomenon that we're seeing all over the place. He's the ultimate cause, and he inspires or induces other causes to act in the world and like that. It's so very complicated. But, now this is where we come in. Purushak, that's us. And the next verse, which is the key verse in this chapter, Purushak sukha-dukkha-nam bhoktadve heturuchite. The living entity himself, we are the ultimate cause for our happiness and distress. You see? It's not that even if it seems to be coming from outside, Krishna is arranging all the pieces on the chessboard so that everyone gets what they deserve. You see? So now, but we have free will. We don't have to simply be pushed around by nature and by our senses without any. We should know from the teachings of the Gita and the Acharyas that if we act in a certain way and we train our mind in a certain way, because it all depends on consciousness, so that we're acting in tune with the material nature, but at the same time linking that material nature and our own senses, which is part of material nature, to Krishna through the process of devotional service. And that way we're assuring that we move toward, that we experience more real happiness in this lifetime, and we open our path to going back to the spiritual world where it's all happiness. Even though, the Krishna Lila, sometimes you think of the Kaliya pastime, it was so painful for all of the Vijbasis to see Krishna they wrapped up in the coils of that horrible snake. And, just think, they don't know he's God. Mother Yashoda just think of a fragile little boy, She wanted to go in, and she was fainting. They wouldn't let her go into the poison lake. So it seemed to be very, very painful. But it's all engineered by Krishna emotionally, Then finally he breaks out, starts dancing on there, and everyone's, oh, what a relief. And the Gandharvas are playing music, beating drums. So it's a turnaround. You study Krishna's Leela in Vrindavan, which is a replica of the Goloka Leela. And he's just like a maestro. He's engineering things that will draw out the most sincere and intense emotions of love for him. And anxiety that he's being hurt, that he's taken away by Trinavarta, some whirlwind. You matter if you put your baby down, somehow he feels heavy, put him down, a big tornado comes, takes him up into the sky. And you don't know he's God. So she was just, fell down and like a cow lost its calf. And, but then by some miracle, some demigod saves him, and the big demon falls out of the sky, is finished, and Krishna's playing on his chest. And Mother said, oh, thank God. Then after that, they did all the sacrifice, bathed him, and they said, may this Lord may protect you when you walk on the street, and may this Lord protect your body. It's so touching because they don't know he's God. They think that's what, and that gives him great pleasure to be loved in that way, rather than all this awe and reverence, what to speak of fear. So the key line here is Purushak sukha-dukkha-nam. We are determining our ultimate happiness and distress. We don't know that because it's coming as karma. But if we know what to do, then we can maximize our happiness to the ultimate degree and no more distress. So that's will be coming out in the next verse. Okay. One of my favorite verses of all time. Purushak pakatisto hi bhunkte pakatijan gunan kananam gunasangosya sadasadyo nijanmasu. The living entity, again we're going to go with experiencing rather than enjoying. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, experiencing the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. The evil here means painful things, not necessarily, what we usually think of as evil. Purport. This verse is very important for an understanding of how the living entities transmigrate from one body to another. It is explained in the second chapter that the living entity is transmigrating from one body to another just as one changes dress. This change of dress is due to his attachment to material existence. As long as he is captivated by this false manifestation, he has to continue transmigrating from one body to another. Due to his desire to lord it over material nature, he is put into such undesirable circumstances. Under the influence of material desire, the entity is born sometimes as a demigod, sometimes as a man, sometimes as a beast, as a bird, as a worm, as an aquatic, as a saintly man, as a bug. This is going on. And in all cases, the living entity thinks himself to be the master of his circumstances, yet he is under the influence of material nature. How he is put into such different bodies is explained here. It is due to association with the different modes of nature. One has to rise, therefore, above the three material modes and become situated in the transcendental position. That is called Krishna consciousness. Unless one is situated in Krishna consciousness, his material consciousness will oblige him to transfer from one body to another because he has material desires since time immemorial. But he has to change that conception. That change can be effected only by hearing from authoritative sources. The best example is here. Arjuna is hearing the science of God from Krishna. The living entity, if he submits to this hearing process, will lose his long-cherished desire to dominate material nature, and gradually and proportionately, as he reduces his long desire to dominate, he comes to enjoy spiritual happiness. In a Vedic mantra, it is said that as he becomes learned in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he proportionately relishes his eternal blissful life. So here, as in, repeatedly in all the Shastras, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, we are given information that should change our perspective of how we should act in this world. And it's giving us a blueprint. Here it's very clear. Oh boy, this thing is too much. Purusha Prakatistohi. So by nature we're Prakriti, right? Okay. I have another one at home I'm going to bring tomorrow. This one is not good. So we are Prakriti, right? Apare mitastranyam prakritim vidime param. In the 7th chapter, Krishna enumerates the 8 material energies: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. And these are all inanimate, progressively more subtle. So then he says, aparayam, these are apara. Apara means not transcendental. These are all inferior material energies. Aparayamitastra, but there's another one. Prakritim vidime param, which is transcendental, or transcendental prakriti. What is that? Jiva bhutam mahabaho yayedam dharyate jagat. This is jivas. We're all jivas. We're the jiva souls. And we are sustaining, first of all, our own body. If when we're in God, the body collapses. So we're sustaining our own body, and in a larger sense, this whole material energy, it's there for us. It's there for us to enact our material desires and live it out, and hopefully to one day take up, transcendental life and change our whole perspective. But we are making our own destiny. This is a very important point. We are in charge of our own destiny, but we don't know how to get our best destiny. If you get an education, a good education, go to college. Okay, now I'm all set. But then you find, oh my God, the jobs aren't there, and I'm $100,000 in debt. Right? It's a disaster. So what happened to your dream? It was just so we're not really in charge. We're acting according to certain parameters that we think are real, but then we may find that they're not active anymore, and we're bereft. So the science of Krishna consciousness is such that if we actually follow the program, we'll experience it. Without fail, it works, because it's given by Krishna, and it's completely according to the science of how the material world is working, the modes of nature and living entity within it. Hare Krishna. So here this very nice principle. We as Purusha, as Prakriti acting like enjoyers, that's the Purusha. Prakriti stohi, we're situated within material nature. And bhunkte, you're waiting for someone? Okay. All right. Bhukte means enjoy or experience. Welcome. Hare Krishna. So we're going to have Bhagavad Gita class for another 20 minutes, and we'll have an artik. If you like to, you can say, and this is the ladies' side. Yeah. So this verse is so illuminating. We are situated within nature. Who can deny it? You know, each of us is a Purusha, a living entity trying to enjoy, you know, which is not our nature. So Krishna says again in the 7th chapter to review, there is another Prakriti, which is this living entities, who are Jiva Bhutama Yedam Dhyade Jagat, and they're sustaining this whole material energy, this whole material universe. It's here for them. On an individual level, we're sustaining this little universe. Each body is a little universe. We're pretending we're the God of the universe, but we're really not. You know, the body will do things that we don't want it to do, and you know, doesn't do things we want it to do. But that's all we've got. You know, this body. So, and when we leave, you know, when the body becomes dysfunctional, boom, it's all finished. It stops functioning. So that's with the 7th chapter, the distinction between the material energy, which may be, you know, in so many forms, these 8 things I mentioned, and the living energy, the spiritual energy. We're all Krishna's energies. So here he says something similar. The living entity trying to enjoy, called the Purusha, situated in Prakriti, earth, water, fire, ether, etc., experiences the gunas, the material modes of nature that are generated from that Prakriti. Okay, we've heard of the material modes of nature. The next chapter will deal wholly and solely with the modes of nature, 14. But Krishna says at the beginning, Arjun, Trigunya Vachaya Veda, Nistrigunya Bhavarjana. Oh, Arjun, try to transcend the modes of nature. Now you're, you know, looking at this as your position in this fight and all of these things in the mode of passion, more or less. You're in the material relationships with your beloved grandfather figure. You have to make sure, you know, Bhishma Deva was never a grandfather because he never married, but he took that role with the Pandavas, and it was very important for them surviving without Pandu. And of course, Dronacharya, who was his beloved teacher. And he didn't want either of them to die, what to speak of him killing them. So he was so he was on the bodily platform. It was all these bodily relationships that he was dealing. So he needed to be brought out of that. So it all has to do with the modes of nature. And we're meant to try to cultivate the mode of goodness and ultimately to transcend the modes of nature. And that'll come up in the next chapter, how that's done. So, now, key phrase, karanam gunasangosya. The cause, this karana, came up in the previous verse. Gunasanga. How we associate with those modes of nature. Sadasad yoni janmasu. That will determine whether we take a good or bad birth, favorable or unfavorable birth. If we're born as a dog, you know, that's definitely, we made a mistake. You know, we didn't associate, we cultivated the mode of passion and ignorance, you know. But we should cultivate the mode of goodness, then naturally we'll feel attracted to the transcendental knowledge in the Bhagavad Gita. We'll be more open to it. And that's why you'll find oftentimes, I don't know if you've noticed this but I know over the years, that someone who comes in contact with Krishna consciousness and gets a book, and they end up coming to the temple, you know, they're probably vegetarians already. Because the vegetarian is a big thing. If you start, you know, not killing, eating animals precludes you're becoming interested in Krishna Katha. That's practically the first verse of the 10th canto, where King Parikshit is asking Shukadeva, oh, now please describe the pastimes of Krishna. Navritta tarshar upagiyamanad bhavaushadat shrota mano biramad. Ka uttama shloka gunanavarat pumam varajeta vina pashugnat. Pashugnat literally means they want killing animals, or even killing yourself spiritually. But pashugnat literally means killing the pashu, the animals, and eating them. So this verse says, Nivritta tarsha, those who are free, you know, pure devotees who are free from material desire, and they sing the glories of Krishna, you know, very joyfully. Ubagiyamana bhavaushadat, which serves as an antidote, an herbal remedy for birth and death. Bhava Aushadhi. And it's not a bitter medicine. It's mano virama, delights the mind and so forth. So then the third line says, who would give up listening to them? He's listened to 9 candles already, and he's about to die, but he's not in anxiety. They perk it. But Vaushadat Shrota Mano Abhirama, it delights the ear and the mind, Who would give it up? Why would you give up listening? Puman Varajait, except those human beings who are eating meat and killing themselves, killing the soul. So that's one of the problems. This is such a painful thing for someone who's sensitive like that, to see the vast amount of cow slaughter and going on, and other animals, and it all has this tremendous deleterious effect on society. These wars that happen. You can imagine you're eating meat all the time, and when I grew up, I didn't connect. I think a lot of kids are like, they didn't connect with the meatballs with some poor cow getting killed. But we used to have chicken sometimes, I don't want to, forgive me. But in many households. But there I could see there was a bird, my father would cut it. And I said, I don't want that, because I was thinking, this poor bird, which is the natural, So in order to know how to cultivate the mode of goodness and all these other things, we need to be able to hear and absorb this knowledge. So that's the key difference here. The cause, karanam, is our association with the modes. If we cultivate the mode of passion and ignorance, then we'll be slaves to the impulses that are coming from our senses and mind. This is explained at the end of the 3rd chapter. Arjuna asks the verse, what is it? I forget the Sanskrit, but he is, what is it that seems to force us to do things against our own best interest? And Krishna says, kama esha, krodha esha, rajoguna samudbhava, arising from the mode of passion. Mahashano, it is the big devourer of the soul. Mahashano, Mahapapa, Vidyanami, Avaidyanami. He said, this is your real enemy, Arjuna. Not all these soldiers on the other side. The real enemy is within, is this kama, which arises from the mode of passion, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. So how to deal with that? How to conquer over lust? How to sublimate, I love that word, sublimate the material desire into desire to serve Krishna. That is the whole process of bhakti, And the process of chanting the holy name and doing other processes of devotional service purifies the senses and purifies the mind, so that one begins to take more and more pleasure in serving Krishna, not in serving one's own senses. And that leads to very great auspiciousness in your own life. Maybe you'll take birth again, but if you do, you'll be born in a devotee family and learn Krishna consciousness from birth. Or you can go back to Godhead if you become entirely pure. But the whole key is here: how are we going to associate with these modes, and the learning? Well, what induces one to get into the mode of passion? Well, the whole thing is based on association. If you associate with people who are in these lower modes, you're going to be in those modes. And now association doesn't even have to be personal. It can be on your phone. It's a disaster. These phones are out there, these young boys and girls, they have hit this button, hit that button, and before you know it, they've got pornography on there. It's horrible. Because there's no ultimate intelligence guiding it. Now, of course, the internet and so forth can be used for good that we're using right now, and the class is going out and so many other things. So the whole question is, what do we choose? What are we going to choose? How are we going to choose to engage our senses and mind? And when we go down a certain path, we tend to get accustomed to that path. So therefore, we have to be careful of how we cultivate this. Because our destiny is in our own hands, with all of the controlling things going on, but we can choose. I always give the example, we're sitting here near the corner of Grand and Cass, right? So there's a little, business area down on the corner, those who know. And there's been a bar down there, all these years. And I keep it. I think there's several ownerships going through. They go out of business. But there's always, that's the alternative. You can come into the Hare Krishna temple, or you can walk a few more feet and go into the bar. It's like the path of light and the path of darkness, right? Now, why would, the people who come into the temple here, no, we're not never going to the bar. And people who go into the bar say, I'm not going to that temple. Those guys, I heard that they, no intoxication, So you're making your mind, with everything you do. It's conducting. And when you're fortunate enough to see the harm that you do to yourself, to let yourself be controlled by the lower modes of nature, then you become interested in cultivating the mode of goodness. And through association. Satam prasangam mama virya sambhito. This is such an important verse. Kapila Deva is teaching his mother. And it's all about the importance of association with sadhus. And it turns out there's 8 verses. So I gave it a name. I hope I didn't commit any offense. The Sadhu Sangashtaka. 8 verses, So first he describes what a real sadhu is after a couple of verses. It's Tikshava, Karunika, Suridak Sarvadehinam, Ajata Shatta Vakshanta, Sadhavak Sadhabhushana. This is the ornaments of a sadhu. First, very tolerant. That's the last thing, someone in the mode of passion, is the last thing is tolerant. Can hardly tolerate his own urges, what to speak of some insult or something. But tolerance is there, the great souls. We saw it with Prahlad. We've been reading about Prahlad, King Ambarish. Prabhupada gives the example of Jesus Christ. Even though he's, threatened with the crucifixion, he still preached anyway. And so they go together. Titikshava karunika. Because in order to preach, in order to feel that you have to have compassion for those who don't have any Krishna consciousness, who don't have any God consciousness. So that puts you at risk by the atheists. You're seditious in the society. So that was true certainly for Prahlad. His father became his arch enemy, but we know because we all saw the movie, or we read it in the book, that he couldn't be harmed. He was protected. So it's a universal program. There's no cost, right? I don't think anyone had to pay $10 to come into the class. Otherwise, I really wouldn't have anyone in the class. But the cost is in your attention, your sincerity to take it seriously, and the benefits are, incalculable. To actually, have faith, which we do. Yes, there is a spiritual world. Yes, we can attain that state where we don't have to come back again and suffer birth, old age, disease, and death. And that should inspire you to go across and really practice. But wonderful thing about bhakti is that it's so pleasurable ultimately that you don't even care about liberation. He said, I don't care. Nadanang nadanang nasundarim. Lord Chaitanya has that famous verse. I'm not praying to you for wealth, for a beautiful wife, for wonderful education. And I'm not even praying you for liberation, because I'm just making birth after birth. Let me have pure devotion to your lotus feet. You see? Because there's nothing more valuable than that. And there's nothing more pleasurable than that. And we saw Prabhupada as the perfect example. He sacrificed so much coming over, almost died on a boat, the story. And then even after he founded the movement, it was still a struggle, traveling everywhere, with failing health. But he was determined to fulfill the mission of a spiritual master and to help fulfill Lord Chaitanya's wonderful prophecy that his name would be chanted everywhere. And he was successful. So if we, connect with Srila Prabhupada through his books, through his devotees, through his institution and everything, then we'll also be empowered to control our lower nature and cultivate the higher nature until finally it's spontaneous, that we want to chant Hare Krishna, we want to come, we want to serve the deities, and help Lord Chaitanya save some souls, go out on Harinam, whatever. So that's what is being spoken here. That we are within Prakriti, and we're experiencing the modes of nature, but as we associate with that mode, that will determine whether we take a good or bad birth. Bad birth is subhuman, and good birth Of course, it's in the spiritual world, it's not a birth at all, but at least, a devotee families we can continue. So that's our choice. Okay, any questions, comments? Any spontaneous poems that you might have thought of? Okay, so it's a little early, but I'll give you, I think we have some new people, so here's the, I don't know if you ever heard of this poem called Kevalashtaka. It's about the holy name. Oh. Did you know I put it into a poem? An English poem? I put it into an English poem, each verse. So here's the thing. Let's see, hopefully I can remember the Sanskrit. How does it start? Oh yes, Madaram Madarebyopi Mangalebyopi Mangalam Pavanam Pavanebyopi Hare Nama Eva Kevalam. Of sweet things it's the sweetest you will taste at any time. Of things that bring good fortune it's the perfect paradigm. Of things that purify, it purifies most powerfully. The holy name of Shri Hari, surely all that be. Right? Abrahmastamba paryantam savamaya mayam jagat satyam satyam punak satyam hare nama eva kevalam. From Brahma's realm atop the sky down to the lowly grass, illusion reigns in Maya Devi's treacherous morass. The truth, the only truth, the name of Shri Hari. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Saguru Supita Chapi Samata Bandhavopisa Shikshyeche Sadasmartum Hare Nama Eva Kevalam. He's the Guru, he's the Father, he's the friend most true. And she's the real mother who most kindly teaches you to always chant and hear the holy name of Shri Hari. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Nikshvase nahi vishvaso kadarudho bhavishyati kirtaneya mata balyad hare nama eva kevalam. Remember that our final breath may come at any time, no matter if we're old and sick or in our youthful prime. So young and old alike should chant the name incessantly. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Hari sadavase tatra yatra bhagavatajana gayanti bhakti bhavena hare nama eva kevalam. Lord Shri Hari forever dwells wherever devotees, whose hearts are fixed on him and free of all impurities, uplift their voices high and sing his name in ecstasy. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. There's it. I forget the Sanskrit. You know it? Anyway, alas, what sorrow, what great pain, the worst calamity, for people to forget the holy name of Shri Hari. Although the name's a priceless gem, mere broken glass they see. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Okay, yes. Okay. Forget this answer. Just fill your ears, just fill them with the name of Shri Hari. Just chant the name with all sincerity. Just sing the holy name eternally. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Triniktritijagatsavam rajade sakalopadi chidanandamayam shuddham hare nama eva kevalam. The last verse I remember. It makes this world appear like bits of straw upon the ground. Resplendently it reigns supreme. Divinity in sound is filled with transcendental bliss and peerless purity. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Now, there's no ninth verse, because these verses we learned, we didn't know who wrote them for a long time. Now we learned that they were written by Nilakanta Goswami, an associate of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. But he wrote 100 of them. And maybe it was Bhaktivinoda Thakur who pulled out those 8 as an ashtaka. But there's no Palashuti because it wasn't written as an ashtaka. So I composed a little one. Inspired to glorify the holy name of Shri Hari, Shri Nilakanta wrote this hymn in Sanskrit poetry. I praise that those who hear this lowly version made by me will chant the holy name of Shri Hari in ecstasy. Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. Wow. So we're a little early, so we still have maybe 1 or 2 minutes for a poem. Then we can all rush it for the kirtan. So this one, you've never heard anything like this. This is by Bhuvamangal Thakur, And it's a meditation on Krishna throwing a little tantrum, you know. Nitam, nitam navanama nitam ke natapitam payakwame murari. Iti samudi yulatantam bhumam balam namami gopalam. Who stole my butter, who drank my milk, and where can my flute be found? I bow to the cowherd child who shouts these words as he rolls on the ground. Okay, one final one. This one is no Sanskrit, it's just original. Now, you have to know the grammar. So, every space, body dies. We're all in a body and every body will die. So, everybody dies, nobody dies. Wake up, and open your eyes. You're not that body, you're a pure spirit soul. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. You too. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. All right, I think it's time to adjourn, and we'll then see the beautiful deities, and but we won't see Jagannath. Jagannath is, preparing for Rath Yatra. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.